Good evening. This is the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Monday, June 17th. It is 7 p.m. The first case we're going to deal with tonight is case number 24-6 for property at 1160 Main Street, and the applicant has withdrawn that request for special permit for parking of vehicles. Does somebody want to make a motion to allow the applicant to withdraw that case number 24-6?
So motion?
Second,
Moved by Tim, second by Judy.
without prejudice, correct?
I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't say that, okay. I thought he said it in his letter, okay.
Oh, no, she's right. Yeah, it's in his letter. Withdraw without prejudice.
Without prejudice, okay. So do you want to allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So moved.
You just want to second that?
Second, sure.
Okay.
Yep. That's what the
Okay,
letter
so
said.
it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on allowing the applicant to withdraw without prejudice? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. And voting on that is the four regular members that are here and Tim. Okay, next case we have to discuss is case number 22-10, Wall Street Development Corporation for Darwin Lane. This is a comprehensive permit. We closed the hearing at the last meeting. We have had a draft decision, and now just we should discuss the draft decision, and if people have comments, concerns, and we have town council here with us to talk about that also. Okay. So I think, Bob, you said you had some comments on the draft decision.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for putting it together.
I'll also note that board member Judy Conroy has recused herself from any discussion.
Yeah, so again, thanks for putting it together. And I had some sort of line edit type comments, I think, in some places where we say, like for an example, in paragraph 4, that we appealed to DHCD. I think that should be the Housing Appeals Committee, because we reference it later as that's the place where the appeal is filed. So
What line was that?
in paragraph 4 and then in subsequent paragraphs. I can
Okay.
I can hand you this afterwards. I
Gotcha.
kind of marked it where.
That was the prior version, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
The one I have doesn't have that.
Okay.
Which one do we have?
Well, there you go.
Or is that?
I got this
You
today.
yeah,
I picked this up today.
I was on the,
Yeah. He said it, I was looking at paragraph 4 in the next section, and it
Oh yeah, no, that's the very
correctly.
right. So that's what I mean, just for
so
consistency
paragraph 4, I think
on the first page.
I provided a little bit of procedural history relating back to when the original application was in 2021.
Right.
So we did submit that safe harbor invocation to DHCD, not HAC. Because at that point,
Right. But then in paragraph 4, maybe I'm not looking at the right. Paragraph 4, it says on October 31, the applicant formally submitted an appeal of the board's invocation of the safe harbor to DHCD. I think
yeah.
that should be Housing Appeals Committee.
No, that's
No, it's
correct.
DHCD.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
your appeal was sent to Housing Appeals Committee.
Okay. Got it. Then on paragraph, in the second section, in paragraph 3, there's discussion at the end, or in that middle of that paragraph, it says, however, this invocation was denied by DHCD on July 7th, 2022, on the grounds that the board has fallen out of safe harbor, and I think that should be the town of Walpole.
Yep.
And then in the second to last line, it talks about the result of a lapse between the issuance of previous project's comprehensive permit and the issuance of its building permits. And are we referring there to the Summer Street?
Sorry, about what paragraph?
Sorry, same paragraph 3. In the second to last line.
Under section 2.
Yeah, this is section 2, paragraph 3.
Section 2, paragraph 3.
It said the fallen out of safe harbor due to the removal of units from the subsidized housing inventory as a result of a time lapse between the issuance of previous project's comprehensive permit.
Got it.
And I think we're referring to a previously approved 40B project of another applicant at a different site. Like, we're not talking about
This one.
this one,
Correct.
right? I
Yeah.
think that would
Correct.
help to clarify that.
Yep.
Just other than explain this, I guess my biggest comment has to do with just how we, at the end, where we're talking about the decision, I think it would be a good idea for us to recite what the board's authority is to deny and under what circumstances. So I'm just going to read what I wrote out, but if this could be anything similar, I think would be fine. But so at the beginning of the decision, I think we should say something like, pursuant to 760 CMR 5605 8B, the board may deny a comprehensive permit if the board finds that there are no conditions that will adequately address local concerns. According to section 5602, local concern means the need to protect the health or safety of residents or the occupants of a proposed project, or the residents of the municipality, et cetera. That's defined. Just so we can tie the subsequent discussion about what I think was the board's entire focus primarily on the most substantive issue was protection of the public safety based on protection of the water supply. So I think we need to I'm suggesting that we should start with what our sort of authority is to deny, under what circumstances, and then have all the factual discussion, which is already in here, follow from that, and then conclude by, based on the testimony of our own peer reviewer and other testimony received, as discussed herein, the board finds there are no conditions that will adequately address the local concern, i.e. protection of the drinking water supply. Something that just kind of ties it all together with the regulation.
I like that, yeah.
So I have, again, scribbled out some language there that I can share if the board is agreeable to that kind of.
I think it makes sense, and it doesn't change the facts. It lines up why we have these concerns. Yeah.
Right, I think it's important in the event that this gets reviewed by somebody else, that, the board has clearly been operating in recognition of its, limited authority under 40B, but even under that limited authority, we can cite chapter and verse why we come to this conclusion. And so I think it's just helpful for somebody who might be reviewing it to sort of see that the board's cognizant of its limits on its authority, but nevertheless finds that we have grounds to deny.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Can he give you that, or?
Yeah.
Yep, I can give you
Yeah, I don't know if you have more if you want to go over.
I guess I had a couple of other kind of just
Edits.
line edits basically, but that was pretty much my most substantive comment.
Okay.
And then my line edits are on here, I can hand that to you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a couple of, were other people gonna weigh in on revisions? So I just had a couple before, like typos and stuff before we got to that.
Did you have something, Drew?
Yeah, I just had that number 7 on procedural history. It's dated January 19, 2021, whereas I believe that would be 22.
Yep.
And I agree with what Bob's saying, and I think it answers a lot of my concerns, which was that the applicant came before us with a reduced number of units proposed, and we denied them under the safe harbor. But later on in our decision, we're expressing that we would desire the applicant to revise the site layout in a manner that would effectively reduce impervious surface and the volume of the development. I think somebody reading that from the outside might interpret that, well, they did come before you and try to reduce the number of units and you denied them, But I think what Bob is saying is kind of touching upon a lot of the concerns that I had from just referring back to actual, tying it back to either Mass General laws or whatever it is that we've discussed throughout the process. I just want to solidify our feelings towards, because I think when he came back with the impervious surface and suggested the pavers, and it does kind of spell that out a little bit here, but again, looking at if the HAC or someone, if this was appealed to, they may say, well, he did make an honest effort to reduce the impervious surface, and you didn't work with him, you closed the hearing on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we do continue to explain peer review's opinion of the impervious surface, and that, I would think the board relying, taking advice, especially from a professional outside engineer, and having to weigh that advice with the applicant's submittal. I think that's kind of where also, while the reduction of impervious surface could be said in theory, it was kind of just proved by outside peer review that it was not really an effective.
So I read back to some of the previous decisions that the boards had against the town of Walpole for 40B cases, and it seemed like, and maybe you could clarify for me, but it seems like we deny them, this is our procedure, they're reading through it, and that applicant has a chance to defend everything that we've denied, reasoning, with little to no rebuttal of that. It seemed like from the last HAC appeal that we had, it was a lot of, we had case in point on this is why we didn't agree with it, public safety, and the applicants got to respond to the HAC board, and that was the final thing, and the HAC board said, yep, nope, they did show that there was a chance that they addressed that. We're ruling in favor of the applicant in that case. And I know they're two different cases and stuff like that, and applicants, but I'm just thinking as strong as we could get it with as much information would be beneficial for the
Yeah.
board, because I'd hate to see the HAC just say, go ahead with it, they get the permit.
Yeah, if there's an appeal on this one, it would be, are you talking about Doopy Street? Or
Yeah.
This one would be a little bit different because it would be expert testimony in it.
Okay.
So, I would anticipate the expert witness that testified on behalf of the neighbors, Scott Horsley, would be identified as an expert witness, and we would identify Sean Reardon in defense of the board's decision. So there would be, and of course, the applicant will have expert testimony. So it would be a different type of case in that event. It would be competing expert opinions, and then the HAC would need to, make a decision based on that, what they found reasonable. But so it'll be a different type of appeal
Okay.
than Doopy. Doopy was almost, it was not a project that made sense to permit it, but the way 40B works, sort of a factual thing.
Yeah, and I think the ruling that they had in the case that we got really kind of showed that they pushed us right out of the way
Yeah,
and
they
said,
didn't pay attention.
issue them a permit, we don't care what your concerns were,
Yeah.
which is always the fear of the 40B process, but, yeah, no, I appreciate the clarification, and I'm good with that.
I mean, I think it definitely benefits from Bob's, kind of tying it into what the jurisdiction is at that point. So, Patrick can certainly think about it if you want to cite more, but, it's going to be something, it's going to be a de novo review at HAC. You want to have enough explained in your decision so that it makes sense. But then the case will be tried at HAC with pre-filed testimony of the experts and then cross-examination.
Okay.
I would recommend as short and sweet as possible on the denial decision, as long as you're citing what was relevant on these issues. But because the reports speak for themselves, they're gonna come out and it'll go from there, but.
Would all basically submit a material it's on the record, so would that also be something HAC?
Yeah, it wouldn't,
Ways and-
it'll, the way those appeals work, they'll have a conference, they'll set up a schedule, and then, but as I said, expert witnesses will be testifying in that matter this time.
Okay.
It certainly doesn't mean that they can't wholesale reject, the expert opinion in defense of the denial decision. That's always a possibility, but they do have to weigh, they have to base their decision on substantial evidence. Something like Dupuy Street is sort of a judgment call. Is it compatible with the neighborhood? Well, no, it isn't at all, but they found it was.
Right.
And they kind of discounted that safety concern. That was clear. You're gonna go over that median line. And that was a case that our own fire department didn't really, provide expert opinion in support of the denial decision. Here you have an expert witness saying, this design does not satisfy me, doesn't satisfy applicable standards. So it'd be a different type of case, but you do want to err on the side of explaining it in plain English about what the real basis for the denial was. I thought Patrick did a good job doing that, but I think it definitely can benefit from that, just the jurisdictional piece. But, and you have time to issue this decision too, so if you wanted to redo that part a little bit, we still, you still have time to do it, but I think it.
I mean, I'm happy to work on it. My only concern is just that the board, anybody who reads it, like the board proceeded in accordance with the rules, and we acted reasonably and relied on experts, as you said, and reached a conclusion. Whether somebody wants to toss that out for, whatever reason, I think the board still has acted perfectly within its jurisdiction and reasonably, so I just want that to come through clearly, and so.
No, I like that a lot in terms of citing, 760 CMR 56, whatever. You're
Right.
providing them, hey, we looked at your
Yeah.
rules and regulations. This is our reasoning for denial.
And I know it's mentioned in the first line about the proximity to the abutting wellhead. One of the things I just wanted to make sure that somebody reading this knows, this property, it's not the proximity, it is within, 400 feet of not just the wellhead zone, but the actual wellhead. We haven't seen anything like that, so, again, I think I just would like to see, sort of like what Drew's saying, maybe a little bit stronger, where it says the site in its proximity to the abutting wellhead. No, it's not the it abuts the wellheads, the wellhead protection zone. So,
What, is that
in
within
the
factual
decision, the
finding?
first sentence.
Sorry, what section?
Oh, in the decision, section,
Oh, okay, yep.
section 4. Concern for the development of the site was its proximity. Well, yeah, it's more than and I know the next word is abutting, but it should be very clear that this is within, 400 feet, not of the wellhead protection zone. It is within 400 feet of the well, so.
Yep.
So,
Well, you're on that section, John, there was a substantive thing toward the end. It says on the second to last paragraph before record of vote, the project's location along the level of grading needed in order to make the site accessible pose valid concerns. I thought that was an additional concern to that raised by Mr. Reardon, so I was gonna say, poses further concern, or, in other words, that concern that's noted in that sentence, I think is an additional concern, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand that. I wanted to raise it to the board, because it'll be me defending this decision too. So I would tweak that language, maybe. I would recommend tweaking that. That's a further concern, the grading.
Yeah.
Do you agree, or?
Yeah,
I'm not
in fact,
saying
so-
that declaratively, I'm sort of asking.
Right.
What you're talking about is taking natural materials that have been there and have been filtering the groundwater for a long time, and now they're being disturbed, and that changes everything in a sensitive area.
And the slope, I think, from the entrance down to where the residence would be, it's all down gradient heading right towards the zone 1, you know.
So I would say maybe pose further instead of valid.
Yeah,
And then just while we're on that paragraph, there's a typo, second line. It came to plan submission, when it came to plan submission. And then just capitalize the A in applicant, just to be consistent there.
So we have some revisions. Bob had them written out. You can provide that to Patrick. We could vote on it tonight, which I'd be comfortable voting on it tonight, or we can put it off until you make these changes and we look at it. But I think what we have before us, and I reviewed, I was good with.
Another couple of typos on, did you have typos, Bob, on yours?
yeah, I do. I can go through them, but I didn't want to waste
Yeah,
people's time.
all
if-
right,
if I
I'll
could
just leave
skip
you
to-
with mine
I
too,
think
all right?
both yours
Okay.
and just,
Okay.
Yeah, they're mostly commas and the extra words or
Yeah,
things
all
like that.
right. So just a suggestion, John, if you're at the point, you could go ahead and vote, vote how you're gonna vote on the application, whether it's denied or approved. And if denied, issue the denial decision in accordance with the draft proposed by Patrick with the revisions discussed tonight. Or you could vote on the project and then to finalize the decision that was discussed tonight, and then have it brought back before you if you have time to do it. So you could do it either way.
Yeah, I'm actually comfortable with the making the revisions that have been discussed tonight. Bob, what do you think? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have 40 days, is that right, from when
From the close of the hearing.
close the hearing?
Yeah.
And it's been 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
So, I'm comfortable either way. If people want to see some of their concerns, like, actually written down to make sure they're captured, I'm comfortable waiting, but,
You want to wait?
No, I'm good.
okay.
Okay. So with the changes that have been outlined in writing here, that would be good. Voting on this will be the 5 of us here tonight. Any further discussion? Let's see, where did we leave it? Does somebody want to make a motion to approve the denial decision with the changes that have been discussed and outlined in writing?
So moved.
should be in the affirmative or
What
negative.
did you say?
It should be.
Should it both be in the affirmative or the negative? So you
Yeah, I
vote
mean,
to approve or vote to deny?
I missed what,
Sorry, you said motion to approve denial decision?
I'd make the motion to vote on the application itself.
Yeah.
And then have a separate, either part of that same motion or a second motion to issue the denial decision. I think it's more clear to vote on the application.
It's two
You know,
votes.
Yeah, either 2 votes or, structure the motion that way.
Okay, so,
Entertain a motion to deny the application and issue the denial decision as proposed with the revisions
Okay.
discussed at the
okay,
meeting.
we can do 2 votes.
I'd withdraw my previous motion.
Okay, do you withdraw your second?
I don't know when seconded.
Okay, nobody second, okay. Okay, so,
I think, John, I should interject. I think that, if it's okay with the board, I'll work with Patrick too on that final draft on incorporating Bob's changes, but also kind of thinking a little bit about what Drew said. And maybe cite specifically to certain of the issues. I think that the decision will probably benefit from that in the end, with provide a little clarity in accordance with what you discussed tonight.
okay. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is vote on the motion to deny. So, does somebody want to make a motion to deny case number 2210 for Darwin Lane?
So moved.
Moved by Mark,
Second.
okay, second by Drew. Okay, so any further discussion on a vote to deny? Okay, all those in favor to deny the application, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Now, does somebody want to make a motion for the denial decision as outlined in the decision that we've had a chance to review with the edits that have been provided in writing and discussed? Okay, moved by Mark.
Second.
Okay, second by Drew. Any further discussion on that? Are you comfortable with the decision, the motion, how would, okay. Okay, all those in favor of the denial decision for Darwin Development LLC, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay.
Do we need a motion for, typically I sign it on behalf of the board, as opposed to having everybody sign,
That would be advisable if you
Yeah.
want to do it that way.
if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, I-
Just saying we've done that.
That's
in the
easy,
past.
yep, as we've done for other decisions. As we've done for other decision, would somebody make a motion to allow the clerk to sign for the board?
So moved.
Moved by Tim,
Second.
second by Drew. Any further discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, so Bob will sign for
Change
everybody.
what's signing it and stuff.
Yes. So essentially,
Okay.
approve the decision.
Okay, next case, case number 20-25, Walsh Brothers Building, 300 Stone Street, special permit under section 11 of the zoning bylaws to allow construction of a single-family dwelling in an area designated as floodplain district. And this was remanded. Okay.
Right, yeah. Maybe do look at track change.
Attorney Almeida, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Give you a track change back.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have Mr. Truax with me this evening, but to sort of pick up where we left off at our last meeting, it's the applicant's position that based on the remand from the land court, in which the land court found that the board had previously found that sections of the floodplain protection overlay district, section 11, B, 1 through 5, that having had sections 1 through 3 previously been determined to have been satisfied, and that section 5 allowed the board to impose conditions but not deny the special permit based on sort of the general spirit of the section of the bylaw in total, and that Mr. Truax at the last meeting discussed 11B sub 4 and indicated that currently the water runoff that's entering onto the property is untreated, and that as a result of this special permit application, it will then be treated. We believe that the 4 special permit criteria have been met.
So, I think that as I looked at this, one of the questions came up about part 1 of Section B, talked about, refers to Section 9 in the bylaw, and that's for non-conforming situations. Currently, there is no building on this property, and I'm not sure how Section 9, which it refers back to, for non-conforming situations, would allow a new structure to be built, and this is right out of Section 1.
Well, it's my understanding, Mr. Chair, that a non-conforming use would, for instance, if there were an industrial building on the property, and then we were essentially trying to switch it to residential use, that would be a non-conforming use that might allow Section 9 to apply. But in the circumstance where it's in a residential zone, and we want to build a single-family residence, so that would not apply.
But it's in the floodplain.
The floodplain overlay district.
Right.
Correct. But, again, turning to the land court, the land court's analysis was that when there is an overlay district, but the underlying district allows the use as a matter of right, that the board's ability to deny the special permit based on the overlay district is weakened. And in this instance, it's a single-family district. We're looking to build a single-family home. Therefore, the special permit criteria are that much more constrained.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions?
If I may, Mr. Chair. We had received further feedback from the town engineer who confirmed that his comments that dated back to 2020 were still valid. And I just wanted to confirm that you're okay incorporating those comments. For example, item 2 of his comments was a foundation drain shall be required. The drain should discharge to daylight somewhere near the end of the proposed grass swale. Anyway, and there are others in that letter that I'm sure you've seen. So I just wanted to be confirmed that there are no issues incorporating that as conditions to the. You're okay with that? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just one. Let's look at it together, yeah.
Judy, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. And I'm just going to reference the peer review company, what is it, what do they go by, GZI, I guess? G. Anyway, on their letter, they mention that any potential proposed filling may alter flow velocities, resulting in increases in water surface elevations. Mentions the downstream, flow area downstream of the Stone Street culverts. And they expressed some concerns with Clark's Pond and then the Spring River, which I believe flows through here. Part 2 in their conclusion mentions that regardless of proposed filling to raise the finished ground floor above the base flood level, GZA's current opinion, based on information in their engineering experience, is that this dwelling would likely remain at risk during base flood conditions. It's in a floodplain.
I'm happy to address that. So with respect to the comments about sort of the general consequence of if the dam were to overflow and the impacts downstream, respectfully, I think that the land court found that that was inapplicable to any of the factors that the board's able to consider. With respect to what you mentioned about the assumption about the base flood level, that was based on GZA incorrectly concluding that the property was entirely within the 100-year floodplain, when it has been demonstrated that particularly the portion of the property that the single-family home will be built on is not within the 100-year floodplain, and that therefore that is also inapplicable. And then third, I would just direct your attention to the first line of Section 1 of GZA's conclusion, where they do find that it does meet specifically 11.3.B2 of the bylaw.
And then, but let's be clear, that then he goes on after that and says that that is not the correct way to go about the analysis of this. I mean, and it's sort of, you know, you're focusing in on one part, but then later he explains why there's a number of concerns about this. And that's one of the reasons why I felt when we denied this the first time that the GZA came out and said, yeah, the calculations were done, but they're not looking at the safety and the actual flood aspect of this. So,
If I could respond to that, I think that reading of paragraph 1 is entirely fair, but I do think that in the land court's analysis, it determined that the remaining portion of section 1 beyond that first sentence was predicated on 11.B.5, which in the land court's view, the board could only specify conditions but could not deny based on the overall purpose of the flood overlay district. So I certainly agree with your reading of section 1. It's not as simple as just reading that first sentence, but I think after the land court's review, it did determine that sections 1 through 3 had been satisfied based on what had already occurred at the previous 2 iterations of this hearing.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes.
continue?
yeah.
Okay. I was giving you time to read. Okay. Do you have a rendering of what a house would look like on this property from the street?
No.
No, okay. Do you have specific, like down the Cape, I know they do this all the time, got to be 16 feet above the floodplain, so they're on stilts. Do you have any idea of the exact finished product of where a foundation's going to sit on this property?
All we know for
Okay.
certain is that it's going to be outside the 100-year floodplain based on Mr. Truax's calculations.
Also, the foundation is shown on the plan, the size, we would have to conform to the size. I think it's 3826 with a one-car garage.
I get the size, I'm not concerned with the side.
The style that could be determined down the road.
Okay, so when you go get a building permit, how are you going to tell the building commissioner where you're going to place that foundation, at what level? I'm going to call it sea level. Where's it going?
When we submit for a building permit, we will give them a certified plot plan, and at that time, we would give them home plans and every other thing required.
So you don't have any idea right now, based on contours and fill coming in or anything like that, what the level of that basement foundation's going to be at?
It's on the plan. That you have.
It is?
And we're certain it will be over the 100-year floodplain as required by the
We
bylaw.
will follow the plan that has been submitted to you, exactly. And so whether or not, when we submit a proposed plan to the building inspector, it may be stamped or show a couple other things that he requires, but it's gonna be in the same location. We can't move it left, right, forward, backward. It's going to be that size, that location, that elevation. Whether it's a Cape or a colonial or contemporary, that's to be determined.
Could you direct me where I can find that on the plan? Do you have it somewhere? I don't have the plan in front of me.
I don't have, is that?
John has
Can someone,
Oh, here's this.
can you show me?
But I think,
You know what,
I think one of the questions, and we've learned this from other cases, you know, is this going to be built, you know, the foundation is going to be almost 8 feet above ground level. And, you know, you said, well, it's going to be on this footprint, right? But what's it, is it going to be, what's the level of the basement going to be? Is that your question?
that's my question. The level of the
I mean,
basement.
I think if you look at the grades, they're reasonable grades, it's not sticking way out of the ground. It grades off, I mean, I'd have to, if you wanna hand me the plan, I'd just take a look, but if you take the top of concrete and then look at the, proposed finished grades around it, you'll see that it's just reasonable grading out of the house. It's not on stilts, it's not.
I understand it won't be on stilts, John. What I'd like to see is in any kind of condition that it's conditioned, that that's at the level you say it's going to be based on this stamped plan, and that's
Agreed.
the grades and the level of the foundation.
But when you say the level of the
Well-
foundation, is it the floor level of the foundation, or is it the top level of the foundation? And that's where, because it could be elevated, you know, 8 feet, but, so.
If I could perhaps address this from the bylaw. Section 11.B3 says that any new residential construction or substantial improvements shall have the lowest floor, including basement, elevated to or above the base flood level, the 100-year flood elevation. And previously, the board found that this plan met that requirement, and nothing's changed about the plan, so the base floor is above the 100-year flood level at minimum.
I guess I just wanted to be more specific, that's all. And at what contour it is, or,
Well, and it does show on that, because if you look, it drops off, it starts at like 170,
right,
the flood level, 100, what is it?
75.
175, and then it drops down. And this is at 177. And again, you know, we have a letter from GZA that says that the flood level will be 2 to 3 feet above the, what's the exact words, I don't want to make a mistake. Yeah, it says here, however, flood depths of the brook would be more in the range of 2 to 3 feet with related higher flow velocities. So,
Can you point
yep,
where in the?
that is.
Middle of
site-
paragraph 1.
Yeah, site proximity floodplain, page 2, at the last sentence.
I certainly acknowledge that's on the page, Mr. Chair, but turning to Land Court decision, page 15, the Land Court found that the board had previously found that conditions 1 through 3 had been met, and found that based on the materials that were in front of it, including the GZA report.
And they said we can't look at 5, so we're with 4.
And 4 specifically concerns contamination of floodwaters. And again, currently, the floodwaters are coming in untreated, and as Mr. Truax said during the last meeting, they're going to be treated as a result of this. And I suggest that that is an improvement to the current condition of no treatment of the water. It's now going to be treated, that would satisfy a subsection 4.
can I beat a dead horse, please?
Sure.
Okay, I guess, I'm not an engineer, I'm more
Neither
into
am
the medical stuff, and Mr. Truax isn't here, but I really feel strongly that I get the footprint, Mr. Walsh, I understand footprints of foundations. I want to be absolutely 100%. So give me a locus, give me some degrees, give me some language that it can be placed as a condition, that you say that's where that foundation's gonna be, and it's gonna be here. I wanna make sure it's here, because I don't want anyone making an arbitrary decision after this is done to say, well, you know, so, well, we're going to give you a building permit anyway, Mr. Walsh, because. I don't want any gray areas. I want it right where it is. If that's where you say it's going to be, and it's going to be so safe for this new homeowner, that their houses are going to be encircled by water.
One of the things,
Respectfully, I wouldn't even think of taking it upon myself and modifying the location of the grades. That would be.
I know you wouldn't, I know you would not, but I want it crystal clear that this is where it's going to be. I want it part of the decision
Could you put in
somehow.
the decision that we're to follow the grades specifically? I don't know.
well, yeah, I mean, that doesn't have to be in the decision because it's in the plan, we reference the plan. I think what our concern is that, is your concern that the foundation will be like a big box sitting up there?
Somewhat, I mean, a little bit, not so much the big box. I mean, I've seen them all over the Cape, and they're marginal lots, and you got, I don't want to get into children's cartoons, but Peppa Pig lives on a hill, okay? And the house is up here, and it's a cartoon. I don't want to see a cartoon down there.
It's not going to be Peppa. We certainly acknowledge that. And again, I think that the bylaw gives you that base level of certainty by saying that at the bare minimum, the basement is going to be above that 100-year flood level. That's the absolute floor, literally and figuratively, but.
Right, and then is there going to be a basement level and then two more levels up on this,
It's a regular home, whether it's a case or colonial.
with a full basement?
It has a full basement. And I think if you look at the grades on the plan, they're reasonable grades for a home. It's not sticking out of the ground, it's not sloping off the back.
And in fairness, it's designed that way in order to mitigate some of the concerns that the board would ordinarily have with respect to the flood overlay district.
So-
It's designed to take advantage of the fact that this portion of the property where the home is sitting is not within the 100-year floodplain.
It's surrounded by the 100-year floodplain,
But-
and,
Agreed.
and you're filling the wetlands to create this island to be able to put the house there,
Pursuant to an order of conditions, correct?
right? And do you already have that order of conditions from Conservation?
We did before both of the previous applications.
Can you show on the plans, excuse me, Chair, can you show me on the plans where the driveway is?
Right here.
I'm sorry.
That's why I was going to it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lane, I
Can you
missed
show me
that.
where the driveway is? Is it directly in the front of the plans?
Mr. Walsh could come show you. You know better than I would.
No,
It's upside down
directly in the front?
Directly in the front.
into the
And
garage.
and there's a utility pole there currently?
I'm not sure of that.
That's what's marked on your plans, right?
Okay, if it's located.
And if you've driven by the property, the utility pole really can't go anywhere else. Have you got a letter from Eversource saying they're gonna move that?
No.
Okay. So there's no, so, which would drive the location of the house? That pole's there, or you'd have to change the driveway potentially, or?
Well, we just said we wouldn't change the driveway, but,
You can't put the pole on the other side of the street because you'd be in the water.
can I spin this?
Sure, yeah, sorry. You can kind of see it in this black and white picture, like bending the pole sideways, and the cables are coming off of it. That's the center of your driveway? Or proposed driveway, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the pole located on this, but
It says guy wire, right, and then a circle with the line
but
clear.
the pole is, sorry. Driveway's over here, the pole's over here. Driveway's over here.
Okay,
25
that's what I
feet
was
away.
asking, because I
Yeah,
thought you
this
said
is the
this is the
driveway.
driveway.
No. That's the wa, did I say wire? That's sewer. These are the utilities, water service, sewer service. The driveway's over here. On the right side.
Okay,
So, and then home is.
all right, I thought when you said the same. Okay,
Yep,
so that won't have to be moved,
no.
okay.
And
The
then if you
hydrant-
look at the grades, these are reasonable grades coming off the side of a home. I mean, it's not that steep, it's sloping, but,
Right, but
Everyone is.
this is at 178 feet,
right.
right? And, you know, how far down do you plan on, from 178 feet, how far down would you dig for a foundation?
170 feet.
So you'd go down 8,
169 to the bottom of
Okay,
the
so,
footing,
yeah.
1 foot footing, 8 foot wall.
so you're going down 8 feet, which puts you down to 168 feet, which is well into the floodplain. So the basement of the house will be, under the flood, you know, lower elevation than the floodplain.
I don't have a baseline for the perennial stream, but
Oh, 100,
this is all sloping off, so we don't feel there's a water issue.
okay, so, starting up here, 170, this has been my concern all along.
Yeah.
176 feet is, what they're saying is the flood elevation, and you're talking about having a foundation that's going to be, the bottom of it's going to be at 168 feet. Well,
I think that's my point. I want to know where that floor is going to go. If it's got to be above,
It's not.
it's,
That's
but,
what it is.
yes, I know it's not. That's what I'm trying to flush out. It's not.
I think the issue is it's not within the floodplain. So, in theory, the flood elevation at that location is not the same as it would be where the water is, you know, in the floodplain. Like, you can build outside the floodplain as deep as you want, but once you get into the floodplain, that's when you have these concerns that there could be flooding in the basement and that sort of thing. But based on the analysis, and I want you to back this up, but this is my understanding, that if the structure itself is not in the floodplain, then whether you go down to 168 or whatever, it's kind of not relevant.
So if.
Correct.
So I'm going to ask a question. Would you consider treating the whole property as being in the floodplain and put the foundation where it should be as if it was in the floodplain?
We've done that. Based on the bylaw, we've put it where it
And
needs to
with-
be. And again, the board previously determined that twice, and the land court determined that the board determined that. So we've done that, respectfully. I certainly know that I'm not here advocating for a popular project, but I think that the land court's decision is clear.
Well, other than the 168, now it's below the floodplain, even though, because it's not in the floodplain, that concerns me.
Well, I defer to Mr. Fitzgerald's analysis of it. I think he has it entirely correct.
I'll ask it again. Would you consider treating the property where you want to build the house as in the floodplain?
No.
Well, because we've done exactly what the bylaw says we must do.
So, not to go back to this from our previous meeting, obviously, there's a lot of history with this case. It started in 2020, and kind of consistently throughout it, those criteria, 1 through 5, 11, 3B, 1 through 5, have been met. You know, your town staff, your town engineer has reviewed that. That's kind of why I reached out to him to recertify that, hey, are your comments still accurate based upon the most up-to-date plan? He confirmed that they were. He had a few other comments, possibly a municipal easement around the perennial stream as a possible condition. as a way to kind of, obviously, for the town to get access to that in case of a situation. The land court decision is pretty definitive. This bylaw itself, your decision-making criteria are really based upon the actual language, and kind of going outside of that is an erroneous way to make a decision for this specific section of the bylaw. That's just, and we've gone at it, and I think that's where land court through this process has been pretty definitive, that you really are based upon that criteria to make your decision.
From the town engineer, point 6 was, as Patrick mentioned, the municipal easement. Would that be, you guys would be okay with the municipal easement?
If you could just refresh my memory as to that condition?
Says,
I don't think
we
heard
asked the board to require a municipal easement around the perennial stream head wall and stream bed for future maintenance. No improvements are currently planned, but at some point there will be a need to work on the culverts under Stone Street.
it. No issue.
Anybody else? So my problem with this is when you drive around town and you see things, you say, how'd that happen? And this is how it happens. And when you see a house that's built in a floodplain and everybody knows it, they're gonna say, gee, how'd that happen? And it's because the decision got appealed and comes back. And somebody's gonna buy a house in a floodplain, and, you know, at some point, there's gonna be a flood. And, you know, you'll hear people say, well, the town approved it. And I don't think I sure don't want to approve a house in a floodplain where people can't even get access to the house because there's gonna be water across their driveway. And it shows it right in the plan. And so.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the
Yep.
developer? Mr. Walsh, my request, was that unreasonable that you had to answer immediately? No, you cannot find a way. I'm asking, Mr. Walsh can step up if you care to move over, Mr. Almeida. I know you can do anything these days, and I know it costs money, but to me, as John just said, to build something that's gonna, it's not in the floodplain, but it is in the floodplain. It's surrounded by the floodplain. It's lovely that the courts tell us what to do. Common sense kind of brings me to my decision. But you have not or will not consider going back to the drawing board just to treat that as or no basement or something that I'm looking out for the person that buys that house. I got films from May 10th this year. That water from the pond was ridiculous. I went up to my knees in water. Where you want to put that house? Yes, I know you want to fill. Yes, I know you're going to have drainage things. They want to drain the basement. Gee, I wonder why. I think there's going to be a sump pump in there too. So, I mean, I'm just making a reasonable request, I thought. because we know everything can be engineered and look nice, and be functional, and be a nice product. We know that.
We feel that it is engineered properly. And I'd just like to point out that we designed these plans and these homes, and we follow the rules and regulations per the town of Walpole. They're your rules. We're just following. We're not asking for any relief. We're going through your criteria, and we just ask that we stay in the lanes, and we think the board should stay in its lanes and follow its own bylaws.
And with respect to, I think Patrick brought it up, that the town engineer found that this met the requirements, and he thought it was sufficiently safe to endorse it.
As did the Conservation Commission.
And again, I certainly understand, based on the history, that the board's not happy with the project, but again, just being in a residential district, the board's analysis is constrained, the way the land court said. But I respect the board's hesitation,
And I think you said the residential district, but it's also in the floodplain. That's what I keep coming back to. You know, if we approve this, we're allowing a house to be built in an area that is currently floodplain. Yes, you're gonna change it, you're gonna fill, you're gonna make some compensatory storage elsewhere on the property, get all that. But the fact is that this house is going to be built in a current floodplain. And, you know,
pursuant to the bylaws, the solution, I think, from what the land court said would be, if there were to be some sort of amendment to the bylaws to change the underlying district from residential general to special flood district, not an overlay district, we'd be talking about something different.
Yeah.
I agree with you there, but with respect to an overlay district, the analysis is much more truncated.
Anybody else?
I think where I'm at is this seems like a bad idea, but I haven't seen anything that gives us the authority to say no.
I would agree with that. I think the land court was pretty clear that we're constrained specifically to this section that I think the reason the prior decision was reversed was because we were looking at the general special permit criteria and applying things like consistency with the neighborhood and things like that, which do not appear here. And so those types of considerations, even they can build a cement ugly looking building if they so chose, as long as it met the dimensional requirements. We don't really have authority, as I see it, under this section to dictate things like the aesthetic design of the house and that sort of thing. It may be very challenging for whoever ultimately owns the house to get flood insurance, because I'm sure that's going to be an issue for them, but that's beyond the board. And I totally appreciate the reluctance to approve things that seem like they may not, make the most sense, but I think the board is only applying the bylaw as it's written, and even though it's in a floodplain, the bylaw makes provision for development within the floodplain, provided compensatory storage and other things are addressed under that section. So I think we all have personal opinions about it, but I think per the bylaw, I think I'm inclined to grant it subject to the conditions that were laid out in the engineer's letter.
Always well stated, Bob. Anybody else? Anybody from the public to speak on this? Board members ready to close the hearing? Okay, and voting on this will be the regular members and Mark. you want to close the hearing?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion on closing the hearing? Okay. Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to close the hearing for 300 Stone Street?
So moved.
Moved by Drew,
Second?
second by Bob. Any further discussion on closing the hearing? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the hearing is closed. So, somebody want to make a motion to approve case number 20-25 for a special permit under section 11, as considering it was remanded from land court, with the condition from the town engineer about an easement around the perennial stream head wall and stream bed for future maintenance. And does anybody else want to add any other conditions?
You'll be referencing the plan,
Oh,
right,
yeah,
John,
yeah.
please?
Based on a plan by GLM Engineers dated December 17th, 2019, with a revision date of 4/21/2020.
I'd like to include the other conditions from the town of engineers, the town engineers' comments regarding the foundation drain requirement. You know, whether or not the sewer stub needs to be reinstalled. And the comment regarding clarification on the driveway detail, showing the roundings going into the site. And then I guess I would propose for the board's consideration, another condition that site clearing not take place prior to the issuance of a building permit, such that if the project does not go forward for some reason or other, the existing natural conditions would remain.
Okay, particularly I like that last one. Anybody else want to add any other conditions? You get those conditions, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. So town engineers, and then there's no site clearing until permits have been issued. Anything else? Okay, that's the motion. Does somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Bob,
Second?
second by Mark. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay. Doesn't pass. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Next, we have Neponset Village. So, this is for Neponset Village LLC, 5 Pleasant Street, comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws 40B. And we have a new set of plans that were submitted, an updated set. Is the applicant here? Did I see Mr. Mackey here?
He'll be right back.
Okay.
Restroom.
Okay.
Talk to Jim.
got mine right here.
It's the last thing I need.
I'm drinking so much. Tin mouth.
Good evening, Mr. Mackey, how are you?
Not bad. Yourself, Mr. Chairman?
Good.
Nice to see you, Mr. Mackey.
Nice to be here.
Okay, we've received the revised plans, and we talked about, we've received the list of waivers from the applicant. Do you want to walk us through where you are at this point with the project?
Sure. Basically, we have received, based on the last set of plans that were submitted, about a page and a half of comments from the town engineer, most of which have to do with details or spot checking, grades, et cetera, and we agree to them all. They're, I will say, administrative in nature. They don't change the plan any. So we can deal with them either as a condition of approval or however the board sees most effectively to do so. With me is Rick Lincoln. He's also playing as engineer as well tonight, and the owner of the project. So he can walk you through anything that has changed. But effectively, we have added in a cul-de-sac. We have taken out the access over to McGuire Park. There's still a hammerhead at the end of it for public safety vehicles, but that's not actually connected other than being there. At the end of the cul-de-sac, there remains a gate. And I think we have satisfied all of the engineering comments but for the list that we got today. And again, we've agreed to all of them. And I'm not aware of any peer review comments for public safety or other issues remaining on the project. So that's, I think, where we are, Mr. Chairman. Subject clearly to any questions your board has.
Okay. So, in the last plan, there was a discussion about a basketball court.
That was out. The fire department was adamant about no cul-de-sacs for turnarounds.
Okay.
And so that's gone.
Okay.
We did ask.
So, one of the things, historically, there was another plan that had been brought forward with, I believe it was 12 units, and then it went down to 10.
It never actually got changed to the 10, but that was on the table.
That was on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have one before us with 24.
Yes.
I understand this is different because it's a 40B. But with a 40B, 25% of the units are affordable.
Yes.
And, you know, doing some math, 25% of 12 would be, you know, an additional 3 units.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we're seeing a doubling, we're seeing it go up from 12 to 24. Raises the questions of, well, what's the affordable point on this? Because we don't want to make this uneconomic for the applicant. But, you know, we know that 12 seemed to work at one point, so why are we at 24 now?
Because, not to put too fine a point on it, when we offered 10, we were told under no circumstances, I wasn't even allowed to discuss it with the board. I was in a room at the other end of the hall. Alana Quirk ran back and forth. And we offered 10, and they came back with, I believe, 6. And that pretty much ended the discussion.
No, but I'm talking about now, where we're at, so, thank you for explaining that. I didn't know that's the details.
Different boards, so I totally get it.
Yeah, but, we're now looking at a project of, 24 units, and at some point, 12 was, or even 10 was something that the developer could build, or wanted to build. And now we're, much higher unit number, and therefore density, and therefore needing relief into, setbacks.
Do you want to take that?
Hi, Rick Lincoln. So this isn't my first time around. These discussions aren't easy, but as soon as I end up going to mass housing, they have certain density thresholds, which I'm sure you've heard talked about. And on attached housing, they generally look for 12, per acre. This one's 8. Parking ratios I know have been discussed. This one's like 2.4. That's a strong parking ratio. So absent any issues with too much density, it's really health and safety, and on this one, we've been through quite a few things, with traffic studies and so forth, and we don't have the health and safety issues, so it's kind of where we sit.
Because we have before us tonight, we're going to talk about the waivers, and, one of the waivers has to do with the setbacks, and, that's sort of, okay, what's the reason for needing the setback, a waiver for the setbacks?
Honestly, it was things moved a little bit when we put the cul-de-sac in.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Thank you. So, does anybody have any questions about the revised plans? I know it shows the landscaping, lighting. But, details about some benches and stuff like that. But does anybody have any questions on what's been submitted?
Just one. There've been substantial comments from the neighborhood about having a very robust sort of ending of the pavement that is serving the development and the hammerhead. And right now, there's a proposed gate, and there's been concern about if the gate is left open, or if it's open for purposes of pushing snow around or that sort of thing, that somebody will eventually just drive through there and down McGuire Park. So I'm just curious if, and I think this was expressed at prior meetings, whether something more like bollards or fencing or something that clearly, beyond a gate that could be opened or closed, but that clearly cuts off any potential access to McGuire Park. That was a concern that was voiced by many folks, and the board, asked if that would be considered at the next turn.
actually, just looking at it and hearing your comment, one of my thoughts is, because the hammerhead was added, I think, to accommodate snow up McGuire Park. I could probably almost pick a point halfway between the end of the hammerhead and the end of our development, and just run a more solid fence through there, because you're plowing, you're almost picking that halfway point for snow. And you can
Okay.
still get around if, to mow. But I'd be.
You'd be okay with it?
that.
Okay.
With a fence?
I think he's suggesting a fence in this area, so
Fence or
something that more
bollards?
definitively prevents anybody from driving
Okay.
around.
Because they had talked about boulders, but a fence works fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, I'm okay with that. That's the only question I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Judy?
I'll just get to the elephant in the room. We've talked about density quite a bit when you gentlemen weren't here. And I think that your original plan going way back that was approved by the planning board but denied by the zoning board of 12 units was a village. You're calling it a village, okay? That's a village to me. 24 on this size property with next to no green space, next to no recreation space. It's not a village, it's a city. So I was wondering if it's been considered to decrease the number of units on this property for this project. I'm sorry?
Again, that's why I kind of spoke to the density. I was hoping to attack the elephant early, but.
You didn't hit it
but-
hard enough, sir.
But the 8.4 units, I mean, I've had a lot denser than that. Apartments, I've done 20. Every site's different. With this one, McGuire Park, you know, the neighbor, but there's no neighbors in the rear. You know, we've got commercial on, you know, the right side and nobody across the street, you know, cemetery. So I think the site handles the 8 pretty well. 8 units per acre, I'm sorry.
Okay, so no consideration, nothing at this point. When you're hearing from the neighbors, you're hearing from me that this is a very dense project for this. Even though you're saying 8, you can push numbers around at me all day you want, all day. It's still dense. There's still 7 buildings. 7 buildings. Triplexes, quadruple plexes, whatever they quadplex.
And, you know, with all due respect, we hear this development these days in Massachusetts and you know, land that's hard to find. You hear arguments, you know, against density all the time, but we do, you know, we're significantly under mass housing's threshold for attached housing. So we've got adequate parking and traffic works and it is compliant, so.
Okay, so would be no consideration to go take the 40B off the table and come back with a,
Well, I didn't say that. That's a different issue.
okay?
We have a zoning problem.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I continue?
Yes.
Was there a zoning problem when you came before the planning board, zoning board with the 12?
It was determined by the board.
This board. This is a new board, though.
I
Okay.
understand, I'm just telling, you asked, so
I know.
I'm telling
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
We needed 2 pieces of relief at the time. One was to have duplexes, because that's a relief. And then the second was to have multiple primary buildings on a lot. We were allowed to do the duplexes. We were denied on multiple primary buildings on a lot because it was not in character with the neighborhood. That is a very vague thing, and I can't come here with a nice flow chart and say, we are in the character of the neighborhood. So I won't say it is a problem that could not be surmounted, but it is a very subjective standard that we clearly did not meet last time, according to the board. And we were unable to resolve our way around it. So that's how we got here.
I don't think he answered your question.
No, but I guess I'm going to speak.
I don't need a variance if that's what you're asking.
No, I know you don't need a variance, Phil, but a special permit for multiple buildings on
One lot.
one lot, which
And then multiple
I'm going to
units.
just say it, there's one before this board that I recuse myself from, I believe. So this board is doing it, or may not do it. So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be new. That's all I'm saying.
I will say, because this is one thing I don't know, I thought the 12 per unit project was a very nice project. It did not have a cul-de-sac. It originally did, but at that point, the then fire department basically said, over our dead body, will this ever be a cul-de-sac? Clearly, they've changed their minds on this project, but we would
Well-
actually have to go back and look at the engineering to make sure we could still do.
So in all fairness, this is probably needs a cul-de-sac based on the density of the project. So I think that,
I'm
Well, look-
not saying it couldn't be done. I'm just saying we've got to.
we're just, you know, I don't want people to think that, you know, the fire department just, you know, abruptly changed their requirement.
It's a different project.
It's a different project.
It is.
And in that, what I started out with tonight was saying, at one point, you were doing a conventional project that was 12 units, and now we're at a 40B with twice as many. And
Yes.
that's why I brought up the bit about, you know, affordable units being 25%. But that's, I could understand if, you know, clearly more units would be added, but, you know, not sure how, you know, doubling 100% increase works for that. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
where are we timeline-wise on this for decision-making and possible extensions or anything?
July 31st.
July 31st.
And then after that, there's 40 days to draft the decision. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do any neighbors want to make any comments on the updated plans or where we're at on this? Okay. Yeah, do you want to come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Bill O'Connell for John Gass. John lives at 7 Pleasant Street, and as you know, we've been here a few times, and we, again, appreciate the board's consideration and time. And, you know, what we heard earlier, we're hoping that the applicant will reconsider potentially coming back in front of you and reducing the number of units. We've talked on numerous occasions about density. Mr. Gass, I think, was present in 2016. He's kind of befuddled by the conversations that were referenced earlier. He said we really didn't have an opportunity to participate in that. So I don't know whether the sessions are closed, but putting that aside, I'll renew my concerns again, which are, Mr. Gass, as you probably know, lives right in front. So when the project originally started, I don't think there were 3 units there. Now there are. He's really affected by the setback issue. I think it's 16 feet. So he's really going to feel the effects of this. He's concerned about the clear cutting of trees. As Conroy referenced, the lack of open space, lack of green space. You know, it just doesn't comport with the neighborhood. There's industrial uses. There's a cemetery across the street. Mr. Fitzgerald, I know you were concerned about just making the connection with the environmental concerns, the air quality. Mr. Gass, it would cost him tens of thousands of dollars to hire an expert. So we think it's pretty obvious, you know, from a layman's perspective. Again, you drive by there's 2 smokestacks going. The area is affected. You can smell it. There's plumes of dust that affect the neighbors, you know, during the summer. We're really concerned about the clear cutting of the trees. So from an environmental perspective, I mean, I listened to the Darwin deliberations. It was great that you did a peer review. It sounded like the peer review group looked at some of the, I know it was water supply issues with Darwin, but we feel like there are important considerations here, safety and health issues that are very, very important. And it just seems like the, you know, peer review never looked at it. And I know that, I think the board asked them to do that. They never did. It's our hope, again, that they would look at it. There's railroad tracks, as you know, behind the the project would, you know, certainty had that railroad probably going to what, 3 or 4 years ago. Who knows what's there for materials, there's things buried on the lot. So we really feel like there's some environmental concerns. You know, we've addressed the density, the snow removal, where you're gonna put the snow removal. I've mentioned and I've raised the issue about the shared boundary in Norwood, and I know that the board and town council is relying on the 2016 opinion, but that was a different project. So I would implore the board to, again, seek approval from the town of Norwood. The 2016 memo, 2016 email from Elena Quirk is in your packet. It just referenced again that they could use the Norwood sliver for frontage and access, but it's never been updated. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to Mr. Gass and the neighbors, where this is a different project, for the board to ask town council and, you know, if there was a determination from the town of Norwood, the building inspector at that time, that you didn't need it, then I think it's fair to ask for that again. We haven't seen that. So, you know, and I know what the case law says. The case law says that it's, you know, if it's a passive use, I'd submit that it's not a passive use. You got a little triangle there, you're using, I'm not sure where the curb cut is, but it's access. And, you know, I don't know if the board's looked at the section 6C, which I think addresses not only the frontage, but the 80% radius. I don't know if that was looked at back in 2016, but I think it's fair for the board to look at that. It's more, there's a sliver there that is part of this project, and if you look at both Walpole and Norwood's zoning bylaws, it just, I think it references that you need to look at it. So I'm looking at Norwood split boundary lots, which I'm going to read for you. When a lot's in one ownership, is situated in the part of town of Norwood, and in part in the adjacent municipality, the provisions of these bylaws should be applied to that portion of the lot lying in the town of Norwood in the same manner as if the entire lot were situated therein. The Walpole bylaw, which I think is section 4, split boundary lots, uses permitted in a zoning district of lesser restrictiveness. It references lesser restrictiveness, higher restrictiveness. So I'd like that to be reviewed, if town council would, with Elena Quirk's email from 2016. So I think there's plenty here. Again, I hope the applicant, you can keep the hearing open, and the applicant will consider coming back. Mr. Gass, again, is really the one that's directly affected. He was hoping that some of those units might be able to move back, if in fact they were going to stay at 24. But you know, I'd submit that in closing, you know, if you do the balancing test, and I know the board's restrained with 40B. We get it. We've seen what's happening in town, but we really think that this one, you know, that there are really valid safety, health, and other concerns. Lack of secondary access. There's other local concerns. Open spaces I've mentioned. Just not the neighborhood for it. You raised the economic issue. This project has changed in the last year and a half, so I don't know, you know, we'd like to see, I don't know if the board will consider looking at the economics, given now that McGuire Park is not being developed. I'm not sure what the costs were, but I'd respectfully ask the board to take a look at that. So I think there's plenty there for the board to hopefully get the applicant, you know, hopefully the applicant will consider getting back to the table, working with the abutters, which has never happened. They've never been approached. So, and if not, I think the board has ample evidence, and hopefully the peer review will look at it a little bit closer, to either deny the matter or at least hopefully restrict the number of units. So again, we can't thank the board enough for their time. We know it's been ongoing, and we've made probably the same arguments, but you know, given what's happening here, we'd ask that the board, again, hopefully get the applicant back and continue to work with the applicant. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, guys.
My name is Greg Nyland, live in McGuire Park. Been up here a bunch about this project, especially the past couple weeks, I think, or past couple months. First off, I'll just touch a couple points. You guys already mentioned some things that I was going to bring up, so thank you for that. Appreciate you guys understanding the situation and digging into the details. I'll just touch on some quick things that I've noticed in the new site plan, and then just go back to overall thoughts on the project. Just regarding the new site plan, it notes the gate we talked about. Thank you very much for bringing that up. If that's fenced in, the last meeting, we talked about bringing in boulders, just making sure that it's very clear that we are separate, McGuire Park, from this 40B current development. It also mentions in the plans mowing of that section. So I just wanted to ask, who would mow that area, right? Is there a homeowners association or anything like that who is actually taking care of the landscaping that's mentioned in those plans if anything dies? Because a lot of that actually is coverage for the new neighborhood. It notes a proposed sign that was designed to be, mentions, if it's a throughway, I think we're addressing that, right? At the end of McGuire Park, they added a sign. There wouldn't be a sign, right, because there is no throughway. So that's good. I actually wrote down, I wanted to look into, I know, guys, I wrote down a lot. I'm not going to get to all this today, especially with the Celtics just starting. But I would like to understand just the height of the buildings. Overall, is there foundations and are they built up, right? Because how will this neighborhood be situated and sit actually, if I'm standing in my backyard, will it be higher or will it be actually dug down low? We can get down that as we get into the details. Also with construction sequencing, I think something the abutters need is a timeline with each one of those phases. That would be really helpful for us, just as generally how many weeks each section would take, so we can plan appropriately, because we both work from home, and this will be very disruptive to the people of McGuire Park. And again, we can get down that when we get there. Lack of greenery we talked about, landscaping. There's really not much two things to actually landscape, but I do want to mention too on page 21 as an example of just the lack of greenery, where they show the lighting plan. The render is covered with greenery that's not actually greenery, right? So it's kind of skews your vision of what this thing could actually look like. It's all pavement and it's shown green, like there's grass there or something like that, which is not the case. It's all pavement. And then also the Norwood area there, I think that's going to have to be included with the plan. It's strictly not being mentioned here, but that little area that's now clear cut should be included and replanted or whatever else, and just be included with the plans moving forward, I think. Okay, so overall, right, don't want to, everybody knows about the density, we talk about it every time. And again, I just want to say this out loud to you guys, to the applicants. We've had dozens of abutters come here. Now it's the summertime, right? We're going to get not as many comments, so I just want to make sure as we're going through this process that the abutters are getting a chance to speak their mind, especially the ones that are immediate abutters. But this does affect everybody. We have people in Charlotte across the street. We've had people from Pleasant Street and Union Street. This affects everybody in East Walpole, considering this lot is a great coverage for what is on the other side, which is Norwood, the industrial zone, which we know about the plant. We talked about that quite a bit. Then I have, okay, all right. That's phase one, that's the first part of just the recent plans. Overall, I do want to talk about what was just mentioned by the applicant, the no issues with traffic. The traffic report is from July of 2021. So that is a completely new world from then. That was in the middle of the pandemic. Nobody was back in the office. Pleasant Street is a much busier place with a ton of spill over from Route 1 now. And that intersection of Union and Pleasant is very, very busy. It goes back all the way down to McGuire Park now with rush hour and things like that. Now we also have Burns Ave. There's a 10-acre lot that could be potentially developed on behind Charlotte as well. That could have, that's there, which could be something happening there. So I think we just need to consider all the projects that are happening and also the new time with a new traffic report. So thank you there. I also have the waiver list. You guys talked about it. I was going to go through it, and we don't have to do that. So we appreciate you guys bringing that up as well. Same thing with the environmental assessment that's listed on the site. That's from 2014. I wasn't sure if the recent one was posted, but talking about the buffer, talked about I have additional things, which I'm not going to get into, which is totally fine. But I just want to say that, like, just in closing, right, like, now that we are at a point where we have an approved cul-de-sac, I think now we have some options, right, to really do what's best for all of East Walpole, not just the people that are immediate abutters. Right? I'm speaking for everybody that's in the neighborhood. A lot of people couldn't actually mention it to me. They're out traveling or kids hockey coaching or whatever else. So now that we have the cul-de-sac, like, let's do what's best for the neighborhood and look at reducing units and see what we can actually do to really just lift up the neighborhood and put it in a better spot that it is now, right? Because that's what new development is all about. I just again, I'll just end there. So I appreciate you guys. Look forward to partnership with the applicant on the project moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And to answer you had a question early on about the grass area. There would be a homeowner association.
Okay, that's mentioned.
Well, that would be one of the conditions that, these decisions are many, many pages long, and there would be a homeowners association, and they would be responsible for the entire piece of property, which includes that strip over to
Okay, so these
McGuire
are
Park.
true, the current plan is true condos. There.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure, because it says townhouse style condos, I wasn't sure exactly what that was.
No, that's what's been proposed, but I just wanted to answer that question for you. Okay.
And I just want to, Mr. Chairman and the board, I've been here many times. If I've been a little less formal in the past, I meant no disrespect.
Would you just introduce yourself for the record?
Oh, yeah, that would help, wouldn't it? I'm Alan Williams. I'm at 15 McGuire Park. Normally my son is here, but he's in the Carolinas basking in the sun. And so you're stuck with me for just a few minutes, but I wrote down what I hopefully need to say, and Greg covered quite a few of the comments. It's been established that a cul-de-sac is essential for this project, and we're all the abutters are in favor of that because it supposedly eliminates McGuire Park. I'm just looking at the plan as a second means of egress. The question I believe Mr. Fitzgerald posed was about dividing the snow overburden area, because in between the two patches of pavement, it's a grassed area. That's an invitation for people to travel across it. If snow is placed there with sand and salt in it, kills the grass, at some point, I think the Neponset Village folks will want to pave it over. That's just my opinion, one person's opinion. If they do that, McGuire Park becomes what we didn't want it to be, which is a second means of egress. So the gentleman here kindly pointed out that they would place a fence across there, and I suggested it be permanent enough that it couldn't be quickly removed. Because that hammerhead, I think you could park a truck on it, is huge. So one of the concerns I have is putting some sort of permanent barrier halfway or wherever in between the hammerhead and the parking lot. And in addition, may I point out here, if possible, to place some sort of fencing. If you fence here, can everybody see? Put a barrier here. If they could also put one here, that would prevent Arbor Court from using McGuire Park. Everybody has an opinion, and it was quite upsetting to the residents of McGuire Park that it was even considered as a means of egress. It's just unsafe, and we were concerned that the applicant considered it in the first place. But we're glad that that's been cared for. As far as the bar gate is concerned, I wondered why one was needed, because what emergency vehicles are going to use that area anymore? But if they want to put one up, I don't see the use of it if the fencing is there, because that's as far as they could go without the gate. As long as that barrier is imposing enough. I mentioned about the snow overburden area. Grass is fine. You put salted or sanded snow on grass, it'll kill it. And what have you got left? And quite frankly, I wrote that even if the grass is maintained, at some point, what would prevent, if there was no barrier, what would prevent the Neponset Village residents from voting to pave the whole stretch? They say, well, make it easier for the plows, and the next thing you know, you got a throughway. So please.
To answer your question, it would be a condition that there's be a fence permanently separating that, so.
So there's no need to bring it up.
Well, no, it's good for you to bring it up, and I'm giving you the answer.
Okay, so a fence
that
will
would
be put up, that'll take.
Well, I mean, that's what we could put in the condition.
That would be great. Finally, construction on McGuire Park, we understand it's got to be curb to curb for sewer and water improvement to make a loop. The question I have is, and I think it's in the plans, what's the phase? In other words, it's my understanding, of course, you're going to have construction vehicles on McGuire Park to reconstruct it. Once that and the hammerhead are completed, will access to McGuire Park by construction equipment be limited? In other words, will they say no more construction vehicles? And if that's the case, I don't see where that's indicated. Maybe I missed it, but once McGuire Park is finished and the hammerhead is in there, there should be no reason for construction vehicles to access McGuire Park. I noticed on the Burns Ave project, there are flags and signs saying no construction vehicles. I'm wondering if that could be added once the construction on McGuire Park is completed. So you can tell by my comments and my son's thinking, something's going to be built here. And as my son and I have both pointed out in the past, everybody has a right to build on their property. We're not questioning that. We're just questioning 24 units. And the answer I heard tonight was, well, 12 units weren't approved previously, so we're giving you 24. And that's what it is. And that's disappointing, because I think a nice project could go in there with the cul-de-sac, with no access to McGuire Park, that would add to the community. So I'm hoping that the applicant will reconsider in the weeks to come. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Going back to the comment about the fence separating, so I do want to kind of go back to the emergency access to McGuire Park was always emergency access. It's always been proposed as a bar gate. There was never any intention of having that as a second full-time means of access. I think the original plan has always had a bar gate there with accessibility only to the fire department. So it wasn't a matter
with a
of-
Knox
box. So I just want to kind of make that point of clarity. That's always been only strictly for emergency access. That's what the fire department has always wanted for that. The area is removed now, and there is a bar gate still there. So having a fence across, that does prevent that way of ever being utilized for emergency access. So I'm not sure if that's something that the fire department would really be okay with. That's the whole point of having that connection and having the bar gate, was in the situation where you do need to get a ladder truck in there. Having 2 points of access from a fire department is something they look forward to. That second point of access doesn't need to be a permanent point of access. That's why there's a bar gate.
Okay.
But I think that was the original intention of having that bar gate.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to talk to the fire department about that.
Yeah, I mean, as we go further, that's one of the questions that we could have for them.
I have a couple couple more questions. I don't think it's a concern anymore because it's a cul-de-sac, right? I think we had that bar before, but.
We don't know that. We don't know that the fire department still, is that what you're saying, Patrick?
Yeah, that's,
Even
I
with
mean,
the
that's,
cul-de-sac?
obviously, the turnaround is important, because that's, something that they were looking for as well from a dimension, but I think that's why there is a bar gate there still, was to have that second point of access if they needed to get vehicles to that side. So, I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't remove it and put a fence there, but I would want to clarify with the fire department that if they're still okay with that, and if they don't need the bar gate, then sure, put a fence. But
Okay, yeah, no, well noted. No, yeah, appreciate following up on that one. I do have a question on McGuire Park, the actual construction of it. I mean, it is it's one of the phases, right, completely gonna be dug up. Is McGuire Park gonna be widened to go to current code? Right now, it's basically a one-way dead end. I'm not sure if it's in the plans. I'm not an engineer to take a look at the detail, or even we're at that level of detail to get into. But I wasn't sure when they dig it up, it's gonna get repaved to be code to fit more
I've
cars.
been down to McGuire Park to take a look at this. No, I think what you're just talking about is the hammerhead would be built by the applicant out on their property.
100%. I'm saying McGuire Park itself is going to need to get repaved. It's going to get, it's the water and sewer line, and they're trying to loop around and go through to actually loop it from 2 different points within Pleasant Street. I was just wondering, like, what is going to happen to McGuire Park as far as our front lawns?
So they do have a phase, I think we'll just get the page number for you, I think it's 10. I don't know if the applicant wants to speak to that as well, but it goes over basically a phase of construction. And so those improvements to McGuire Park includes the replacement of a water main on McGuire Park to be coordinated with Town Engineering Department, full depth reconstruction of McGuire Park to be coordinated with Town Engineering Department, bituminous sidewalk pavement reconstruction along Pleasant Street to be coordinated with Town Engineering Department, so not sidewalk on McGuire Park or anything like that. So I guess that would be a conversation with the engineering department. I don't think there's room to expand it, so I don't think that's
No, not the
feasible.
ask is to not expand.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring it up to actually say that it's going to have to get repaved. So I wasn't sure if there's code that we need to abide to for the paving of a new road. So that's all.
Okay.
Because we got no front we got flowers by the road,
Yeah.
but it's pretty tight back there. So just wanted to bring that up.
Patrick, to your point, with the water main being replaced there,
Yeah,
there'd be an expectation that
it would get repaved as well.
it would get repaved, whether it's repaved by the town or by the applicant. That's something that would be worked out.
Yeah, in
You
terms
could
of it
condition
is
it.
part of the mitigation that was discussed. As obviously mitigation.
Totally understood as repaving, just seeing if it needs to get widened with,
Yeah.
with the new paving, and hopefully not, because
I mean, we could condition that to be discussed with the engineering
we're
department.
really tight against the road.
Yeah.
Basically, we treat it like our driveway. So, okay, I just want to say that. Thank you.
Yep.
I guess I should have spoken to my neighbor. When I measured the street, that's property line to property line. So for the pavement to be widened, you'd have to impose on the property of the abutters, and I don't see that happening. And may I just say, Patrick, the 40A submittal
Yep.
had no emergency egress to McGuire Park, and the fire department was satisfied with that.
Yeah.
I'm just very concerned about what could happen down the road when all of this is done, and all of a sudden, one day, we get traffic on McGuire Park. That's my, with all due respect.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, very quickly, just for a point of clarification, so the waivers, originally, I think as part of the original application, there were waivers for frontage. But I think those aren't included anymore. Is that no waiver for frontage? Okay.
Asking for one, the board thinks we need one, we'll put it in.
Okay. So I would ask. Yeah. So again, Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping that the board will get that 2016 decision updated. I read it differently. I'd submit that both Walpole and Norwood would have split boundary bylaw provisions that, require that at least
let's just talk about this, because it's been brought up by you and one of the neighbors. We do have town council here. This triangular piece of property that's in Norwood is not being calculated as part of this project. It is, it's in common ownership. What?
It is for frontage, right? I mean, it is for frontage.
Yeah. No, it is, that was what the determination he's mentioning from 2016. So when the project was before the board last. I don't know if you remember that at all, but it was a town council Alana Quirk. So we had that submitted as kind of like case history. And it explains, how they came to that decision. That property that is within Norwood can count towards the frontage, so being that it is not developed. Because it's all one
Okay,
parcel.
so the count, I guess now.
May I?
Yeah.
Yep. So, we are counting the land in Norwood for frontage, and that also makes the circle work. And that was what was determined in 2016. So we did not ask for a waiver this time around. If things have changed, we will add 2 waivers to our request list, and the project remains unchanged. In 2016, which we did abide to, Jerry Blair was reprising Bill's position, brought this up, and it was determined at that point by town council that as long as nothing touched that triangle, we could use it. So it is not being clear cut. It is not part of our curb cuts. It is completely outside, not by much, but outside of the development that we're actually disturbing land on. And as long as we adhere to that, it was determined in 2016 that we did not need a variance for frontage or the circle. If that determination has changed, then we would respectfully submit that we need to update our waiver list. But we did not submit them based on what town council had previously done and our adherence to her, because originally the 48 plan had the driveway going through there and a lot of work happening, not a lot, but clearly site work. And we shifted the whole thing over so that we could abide by Ms. Quirk's interpretation.
One
Yes.
question. What I've understood from previous hearings is the area of that triangle is not part of your total square footage of this
That's
site.
probably correct. I would have to ask the engineer.
Not sure on that.
Okay.
He did say that.
What?
I believe he did say that.
Okay. And then and I think I looked at the numbers and that was correct. Are you saying now that because if you look at the plan, Walpole has 56.88 feet of frontage and Norwood has 53 feet of frontage.
Correct.
Are you, for this development that we're talking about, are you using just the Walpole frontage or using both frontages?
Depends on what does use mean, and I'm not trying to be
I know.
sarcastic here. We are not constructing anything in the Norwood frontage, but we did not ask for a waiver for frontage based on having 100 actual feet of frontage on the road. So we are using it not to ask for a circle or a frontage waiver. We are not using it to actually develop anything.
Okay. So you're using that area even though you're not building on it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
No, that's right. No, that's right. So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, through you, I guess the question is, would the board consider asking the applicant for waivers? And can this board grant a waiver for Norwood zoning, if Norwood zoning was required? We don't know that because we have something in this memo, page 4 of this memo, that references that the building inspector in 2016 indicated that no filing is necessary. But again, I would ask again that it be updated or, in addition to the waivers. So I don't think, can this board grant a waiver for Norwood? I would think not, but I don't know.
Yeah. But again, interestingly, They're not asking for a waiver for frontage.
Well, he just indicated they are basically for the use, for the 100, right? They're using 53.
But no, it's not on the list of waivers that they're asking.
No, I know,
for,
but I
right?
think it should be. I think it should be. So that's what I'm asking.
Okay,
You can't grant a waiver for Norwood, but you could grant a waiver for Walpole.
right.
I mean, it would be tough to, unless you have some local regardless of the opinion on, adding that to not need a waiver, it would be tough to justify the denial of that waiver.
Right.
So it's not that much of an issue
In the whole scheme of
compared to
things, right.
the other issues you're looking at here. Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, so at this point, one of the things that we can do, and I recognize the hour is getting a little bit late, but we do have the waivers. This is not a huge list of waivers for a 40B. I think there's about 7, maybe? How many? How many? 6, 7? 7. So I think it would be helpful, at least for me, if we just looked at the waivers and said, do we have concerns about these waivers? And we always do this in the public session, obviously. But I think it would also give us an idea of where we're heading on this as far as timeframe. And we do have the waivers with us tonight, so what I'd like to do is just go through the first waiver, which is for the lot size. Lot size required is 240,000 square feet, based on 24 units, 10,000 square foot lot, and this is coming in at, or half the size, coming in at 118,000 square feet. Overall, do people have concerns about that waiver, or what are your thoughts on that waiver? Okay, I can.
I have a
get us started.
question.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
There's a question. So, being in favor of the waiver, that means you're in favor of the current density of the project.
So,
If you don't grant the waiver, flip it around. If you don't grant the waiver,
Right.
then they cannot build the density that they're looking for.
right.
Okay, just a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, right, this comes down to the question about, one of the questions about the density. And I also know that, the applicant spoke tonight already about what Housing Appeals Committee has for an idea of, not Housing Appeal,
Those people.
Mass Housing, Department of Housing and Community Development, which now there's something different.
Oh, yes.
But, and they're at about 8 units, so, but that's part of this waiver relates to the density, to answer your question.
That was my question, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? At 124,000 square foot, is that also included the strip behind McGuire Park going to Arbor Court?
Yes, it's counting their entire parcel, yes. So that's actually an interesting point. That's a decent-sized piece of property that's not being built on, but it's part of that.
Yes, but it is part of the land that they own.
Totally, right.
But you're right, and especially if the fire department comes down on fence side, a lot of that's not even gonna be accessible. It's true. If we fence down between the hammerhead and the cul-de-sac,
Yeah,
then
but
it's gonna be even more separate.
I think what we're looking at is the number is, even if you had, say, a long spit of land going out into the wetlands, that would still be counted.
Right.
Next, so, Judy, you asked, and so that does have to do with the density
Okay.
of it. Okay. Next one has to do with the 50-foot buffer zone is required for a development with multiple units on one lot. And instead of 50 feet, this is down to 17.9 feet. What I see here is it's a question of density.
Mr. Chairman, on the Pleasant Street side of the project, the single-family home is the first block next to the driveway?
That's John's house. John's house is right here, right?
Yep, okay. And the other ones are apartments, I believe?
Yes.
It's
There are
quite a
two
large-
single-family homes on this, as far as I remember. Mr. Gas is right here.
Yep, yep,
Mr. Gas is
Yep.
here, and I believe this one is also a single.
on that side.
Everything else is multiple.
Does that answer your question? Okay. So what the next waiver is very similar to the first one, which is the lot requirement and same required lot size is 240,000, and this is coming in at 121,000. So again, this is based on the number of 24 units put on there. Any questions or comments about that request for waiver? Again, relates to density. Next one, lot coverage by structures and impervious surfaces. This is not in the water protection overlay resource area. 50% is allowed, and this is 51%. So I think it's totally different than some other developments that we've seen before the board. Anybody have any thoughts or comments on that? Next one comes to the rear yard setback for the general residence. 30 feet is required, and this goes to not only Mr. Gass, but also some people on McGuire Court, as far as the setbacks. And 30 feet is required, and this, what we're seeing is requests for a waiver down to 17.9 feet or 16.6 feet from the rear of the property. To me, this too relates to density. Flipping to the next page, the waiver for number of buildings per lot. And they're asking for severed separate buildings in the general residence, which is 6 more than allowed without a special permit. But that's, to me, that's based on the nature of this project. It's a condominium development on one lot. And the last waiver talks about projections no more than 48 inches, and this has to do with the decks on the, is that correct, Mr. Mackey, about the decks?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So one of the things with the, would the lack of decks make this project, uneconomic or, are decks necessary for this? And to me, that's always the question. Does going too close to the neighbor's property, is that outweighed by the need for affordable housing in Walpole? So those are the 6 waivers that we have before us, and I think we should just think about them. And we don't have to. Does anybody have any comments on the waivers tonight? Okay.
Just, sorry, just a question, I'm just trying to get a clarification. You're talking about the proposed egress from the units are exceeding 48 inches encroachment into the setbacks. There are 18 4x4 landing platforms that exceed 48 inches. Are you saying that so there's essentially 0 setback? If it's for a 4x4 landing, 4 feet?
Yeah, but I think what you didn't include is because the frontage complies if you include the portion from the
They're talking about
It's these,
I'm actually trying to figure out how that's. This is, I mean, my calibrated finger here, looks to be about 15 feet. It's 69.
So with the,
To answer the question, though, the deck is not up against a property line. There's still space in between. And it's not a deck, it's more of a landing.
like paved,
Which I believe
paved,
is actually more fire code, because it looks like you've got patios. Yes, so.
Not a covered structure. and-
No, it's not
and never
covered,
to be
but
screened.
Mr. Norton changed that definition years back and made half of the houses in Walpole non-conforming, mine included. But the deck is actually a landing to have the second egress.
that's right, at ground level, like with paved.
Yeah,
pavers, that sort of-
there are patios behind them, but there
Yeah.
aren't built-out decks.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, to your point, decks would not be considered, I think, an
Okay,
economic
so
hardship.
it's,
If you look at those little squares,
Yep, those-
that's what we're talking about.
that's what you're talking about?
Yep. So it's basically enough room to open a door and
Yeah,
get in and out of the house.
steps aren't in them.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
I have a
Sounds like-
question for, why does the height of the arborvitae's drop to a lower, 6 to 7 feet, directly behind the units that are closest to the property line? When the arborvitae's that are towards the cul-de-sac and towards the parking lots are 7 to 8 feet? Is there a reason for that? I know you're not a landscape designer, I'm just,
I suspect it's a mistake.
Okay.
We're happy to carry the 7 to 8 feet all the way around.
Good observation.
We're not planning on changing plant species halfway through the fencing or the screening.
I don't know, maybe I'm looking at your planting plan incorrectly, but it looks like the,
No, you're probably right.
okay.
We'll fix it.
Anything else on the waivers?
Yeah, the only other thing I saw was on your zoning table, your max building height is provided at 35 feet, which is,
Max allowed.
right, so no waiver on height.
We're not asking for one.
Okay. That was a question by someone in the audience.
Fair.
earlier.
Drew. I was just gonna say, within the original application, they do have preliminary architectural renderings of elevations. The only other image that was provided to the board was just a kind of a 3D rendering, which didn't have elevations, but within the architectural renderings they provided, they're listed at 32.5 feet in height of
Okay.
structures, so at least that's the one we have on record.
you have anything else for tonight, Mr.
I
Mackey?
do not, no, Mr. Chairman.
So I definitely think we should keep this open. We've introduced the waivers tonight. I think we can have a full discussion of the waivers at another meeting, but, you know, that's where we're at, is the waivers, and I think we keep seeing the question of the density being a concern. That's what's driving most of these waivers, and we also know historically what was proposed, so be interesting to see what we could get as far as something that doesn't require as many waivers, that bypass the town of Walpole zoning bylaws. So, okay. Does anybody have anything else on this? So, what's the next hearing?
July 10th.
July 10th.
July 10th, okay. What else do we have on that night?
There's a new case, there's a new hearing, there's the continuation of Pinnacle, and then there's the 40A project of Pinnacle, which is also new for the board.
40A for Pinnacle has been submitted?
Yes.
Mr. Mackey, do you want to continue out until that point? And I think at that point, we should be, have the finalized set of plans with any comments, any revisions, and then I'd like to do, with board members, a full discussion of the waivers. That should be the focus of, you know, what waivers are necessary for this project, and we want to make sure it does not become uneconomic.
Fair enough.
Do you have a question, sir? Do you want to just come forward to the microphone?
No worries. When would we find out the fire department's, or how would we find out the fire department's input on the fence?
I can reach out to Alan Hoover, who's the deputy chief who writes their review, and similar to any other department comment, once we have a letter submitted, we'll post it on the town website, provided to the
So
applicant.
it'll be posted?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if you would reach out tomorrow or the next day,
Yeah.
and just
I'll
say,
see if I can-
you know, because we're getting towards the end on this, but
Yeah.
I think it's coming all down to one word, Mr. Mackey.
Fully understand.
Okay. Okay, does somebody want to make a motion to continue until July 10th, 7 PM here at Town Hall?
So moved.
Moved by Judy, second by Mark. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So, we don't have minutes for tonight, and without Dave here tonight, Dave Anderson, we really can't talk about restructuring the board, but I did want to have that on the agenda, because normally we talk about restructuring the board after the town elections. So. Does anybody have anything else for the board tonight? Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Judy. Second by Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go Celtics.
Go Celtics. 46-31. Celtics.